Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Okay, welcome back to Policy and Rights here at Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. In Nepal, the famed Sherpas, their village, a small village in what is called Thame, Nepal, near the Everest region, is actually in danger of flooding because of glacier melt. If anyone has any doubts about climate evolution, the Sherpas in Nepal would say that it probably is true if a glacier on the top of Everest is melting near their village. Okay. In other areas, we have heard this be debunked by the Russian government in press conference, saying that it is not possible that Ukrainian forces have crossed into Russia, and yet we have reports in this morning's newspapers here in the National Post, claiming that Ukraine has blown up bridges on Russian soil. So, kind of tough to say which way that war is going, but they still do need to come to some sort of an agreement that would end the violence. The war has been going on for a number of years now, and a lot of lives have been lost, a lot of destruction has happened, and they need to come to some sort of negotiating table to put it into it. So we do urge Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin to come to some sort of agreement with that. And also, moving into the United States with the presidential election, the Obamas took the stage in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention, which, hey, the Trump people were saying it was sparsely attended to, but other sources are saying that the Obamas brought star power to the Chicago convention, and as both Barack and Michelle spoke to people who attended the convention. In both sides of the campaign are saying that the other are saying that they're picking up steam, especially in social media. There have been I've seen on my own Instagram account, if you follow me, of course, at Michael Clogs on Instagram, that both sides have been doing some mudslinging and attempts to tear down the other's campaign. I will say that I have noticed out of the mudslinging that if you go and look for yourself, that you'll see that the Harris campaign has taken breaks from the mudslinging to actually put real information for people to know what it is that she stands for. So, in a CNN report, there was a news about hostages that have been found by the Israeli forces, that they have actually been killed. They found the bodies and recovered them in some sort of a raid. Another area that they need to come to some sort of way of ending the violence. It has been going on way too long. We've heard reports that Anthony Blinken of the United States has been trying to negotiate a ceasefire for months. He gets one side on one board and the other falls off, and between the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, they're trying to broker a deal that would release hostages and end the violence. Some of the sticking points are allowing the Palestinians to have control of territory and their own government, and the ability to block off some of the settlements. As on the other side of things, Israel wants to be able to continue settlements and have absolute control over territory. So there are some of the sticking points and where things are maybe not always going so well. So that's that from the BBC. And CNN reporting, and we have okay, so back to the Democratic National Convention, that Joe Biden, with a lengthy ovation for Ms. Harris again, as he says, I gave my best to you, and Biden also slammed the door on Donald Trump as he made a case for the party's new presidential nominee, and for historic leadership, and the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who also ran against Donald Trump, as you will remember, when Mr. Trump took office himself, made some statements about Ms. Harris versus Donald Trump. So we have some of that. Escalation of cyber attacks in the U.S. government include the Iranian government behind the hack and leak operation that targeted Donald Trump in his presidential campaign. Also attempted to target the Biden-Harris campaign. The FBI has briefed the former president on their preliminary findings after a news organization reported receiving documents believed to have come from an account belonging to a senior Trump campaign official. So And there's flash flooding warnings and emergencies in the state of Connecticut as the 2 people were found dead in the town of Oxford because of the flooding, 15 miles west of New Haven. And the deputy commissioner at the state's Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security described the rain produced unprecedented flooding that has destroyed communities. And we also have a European space agency. This is something that we like to see. Peaceful coming together of people. The European Space Agency will slingshot a spacecraft around the Earth today, on its way to Jupiter. The JUICE, or the Jupiter Icy Moon Exploration Spacecraft, launched in April 2023, is conducting the first flyby of the moon in succession with and first double gravity assisted maneuver. This process serves as a slingshot, allowing the Earth's gravity to put the brakes on the JUICE current trajectory and set it on track to arrival at Jupiter in July of 2031. So let's move forward into today's show, and we're going to be hearing from Lebanon. As you heard from a friend of ours, Samar, who actually lives in Beirut, talking about the explosion and what has happened after the ammonium nitrate explosion. What has happened after that in the attempts to rebuild, or should I say the lack of attempts to rebuild Lebanon and Beirut and the port. Tensions are mounting in the area, and the United Nations is attempting to quell the violence and the buildup of tensions. They're saying that there needs to be more of a calm among the people. The issue is that with the lack of rebuilding that has happened since the explosion, that the people are upset and want the Lebanese government to actually take some action. They want to see something move towards them rebuilding Lebanon back to what it was in the area. It was a center of commerce, and as you heard from Samar, and in a previous episode, and the people are getting intense that they want to see some action, and the United Nations teams that are there, they're asking for some sort of de-escalation efforts to happen, and we're going to hear about that next. Also, we are going to hear from the province of Ontario on things that are happening there, and we're also going to hear from Russia as they made some statements on the as a United Nations stakeout, and we're also going to hear from Libyan women and girls as a statement was made again as a stake on the stakeout floor at the United Nations about the treatment of women and girls in the country of Libya. So next, we're going to hear from Humanitarian Coordinator for Lebanon, Imran Riza. He's also going to mention at least 130 civilians have been killed in Lebanon, including 10 Syrian nationals in the past. In 21 paramedics were also killed, and at least journalists have been killed. So there's been some serious deaths, some things happening there. Also, according to the humanitarian Imran, the Lebanon has already facing a grim situation protracted by political, financial, a socioeconomic crisis before October last year. Now in 2024, those in need have reached more than 3.7 billion people, and that also leads back to some of the things that we heard from our friend who is actually in Beirut, Samer. So let's move forward and hear what Imran Riza has to say from the recordings from the UN press floor.
Mr. Riza, if we could plug in a guest. There we go. Hi, we see you. Hopefully you hear us. As mentioned, we're delighted to be joined by Imran Riza, our resident and humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon. Mr. Riza is here to brief you on the very challenging humanitarian situation in Lebanon, but also just to note that obviously Lebanon for the UN has a political file, which is being handled by our special coordinator in Lebanon, has a peacekeeping file, in which UNIFIL and our peacekeeping colleagues are in the lead. But Mr. Riza is here to talk to you about the humanitarian end of the situation. So Imran, please welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Steph. Very pleased to join you today to update on the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. And I also actually share my impressions from the mission to southern Lebanon yesterday, which we undertook to mark World Humanitarian Day. Some of you in the room might recall that I was last with you in person in New York on the 5th of October last year. And at that point, I was talking to you about the needs in Lebanon and how Lebanon was pretty much off the radar in terms of attention and focus. Look at where we are today. It has unfortunately changed in a very negative manner. Over the past 3 weeks, tensions have been at their highest peak. The urgency of de-escalating tensions cannot be overstated. As the Secretary General has said, all efforts should lead to a return to calm across the blue line. 10 months on, nearly 200,000 people have been displaced by the exchange of fire across the blue line, including more than 110,000 people in Lebanon. Nearly 150,000 people remain within 10 kilometers of the blue line in areas of South Lebanon that are impacted daily by shelling and airstrikes. At least 130 civilians have been killed in Lebanon, including the 10 Syrian nationals this past weekend. 21 paramedics and at least 3 journalists have also been killed. Yesterday, to commemorate World Humanitarian Day, I traveled to Heberia in South Lebanon, to the site of a relief center where 7 paramedics were killed in a March airstrike. As you can imagine, it was quite emotional discussing with the mothers of these 7. We keep repeating the message. More needs to be done to end these hostilities, to find a diplomatic, political solution, and immediately and continuously to protect civilians and humanitarian workers. I'm here today to speak of the humanitarian situation, our challenges, our needs. And while civilians are, of course, impacted on both sides, I will be speaking of the situation in Lebanon, where I am the humanitarian coordinator. As I briefed you last time, Lebanon was already facing a grim situation of protracted political, financial, socioeconomic crisis before October last year. Now, in 2024, those in need have reached 3.7 million people. This includes crisis-affected Lebanese, Syrians, Palestinians, other migrants. The conflict has further eroded the capacity of the state to tackle political, economic, and security challenges and to provide basic services to the population. In Heberia, as in other communities that I've visited over the past 10 months, I have seen and heard the distress of those remaining and those displaced. People's livelihoods have been devastated, their access to water, electricity, and healthcare has been affected. Children and parents are suffering psychological trauma. Some students are able to access education only online, most not at all. In this volatile and complex operating environment, the humanitarian community in Lebanon is responding to the needs of the displaced, as well as those remaining in frontline areas, despite the insecurity, despite the access challenges, and the lack of funding. Our annual appeal for assistance for all of Lebanon is, at this point in August, only 25% funded. Nonetheless, we have managed to reach 1 million people with assistance and support so far this year, including at least 180,000 people affected by the conflict in South Lebanon. We continue to do our best to improve our ability to reach people in need, strengthening our coordination, prioritizing our efforts to target the most vulnerable, negotiating access for assessments and distributions, but we need more resources and funding. As a humanitarian country team, we need $110 million to finance the ongoing response for up to 290,000 conflict-affected people in Lebanon. That's the estimate that we have from now, from August through the end of the year. Despite the challenges they are facing, I would like to recognize and commend the government leadership on coordinating preparedness and response plans. An important meeting was convened by the relevant national authorities on the 7th of August, bringing together government, humanitarian partners, and also the private sector. As agreed then, should there be a further escalation, we will need even more. In terms of preparedness, right now we are calling for an additional $36.4 million to pre-position food, water, medicines, and non-food items such as hygiene kits and shelter materials for immediate use in case of escalation. I'll close by just saying I think the obvious. A full-scale war in Lebanon would be devastating. We desperately need success on the political, diplomatic front. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. We'll go to Edie.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Before I ask my question, could you tell us how much the humanitarian appeal is? I know you said it was 25% funded, but what is the appeal? And then you said you're now asking for another $34 million in addition, and I want you to just clarify that.
Okay, it's just it's 2.72 billion with the overall appeal that is there for all our work in Lebanon on the humanitarian and stabilization side. We are asking, in addition to that, for $36.4 million, which would be for preparedness, which would be for pre-positioning essential supplies, because we do worry about the situation escalating. It's the prudent thing to do, given the experiences that we had in 2006, when it was very difficult to move around.
You said at the end that a full-scale war would be devastating. what is your assessment of the situation now? We hear that it's been escalating, and do you see people on the ground making preparations also? Thank you.
We've been in this situation for 10 months. We've had certain periods that have been extremely escalatory. There have been others where we've just seen a continuation of this so-called controlled exchange that's been happening. I think the last few weeks have been extremely alarming. And throughout, we have been making contingency plans and trying to prepare. There is, I think, a very, very high degree of anxiety, of uncertainty. Certainly, a few weeks ago, we saw the sort of accelerated departure of many people that were here for the summer. So, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball on this. What we need to do is prepare for a continuation of what we've been dealing with for the last 10 months, but we also need to prepare should it go to a much higher level of escalation, which, of course, would be devastating.
Thank you. Ephraim?
Thank you so much. I have a couple of short questions. The 3.7 million people who are affected so far, does that include the Syrian and other refugees in the country, or are we talking about just Lebanese here?
No, that does include everyone. It includes Palestine refugees. It includes what the estimate that we're using these days is 1.5 million Syrians that are there.
Yeah,
and of course a small number of migrants as well.
Yes, and the $36 million that you need to pre-position the essentials, should a scenario similar to the 2006 when Israel imposed the complete siege on the country, how long would that be enough for those essentials? Like, how many months would they last?
What we're doing now is trying to make sure that we have enough to cover the first 2 to 4 weeks if we see a very rapid escalation happening. We would obviously need much, much more than that, and it would be a completely different scale of response at that point.
And the 130,000 southern citizens who are fleeing the south, where are they going, and what do we know about their situation in other areas right now?
At the moment, it's a little over 110,000, and many of them have gone to different communities, people they know, host families and others within the South, and many have gone actually beyond the South as well. So when we talk about pre-positioning and talk about being prepared, the response is happening very much in the South, but we need to be prepared in other regions as well. Should the displacement continue to increase in some of these other regions.
And one final one. We've read that what the country has now in terms of food and humanitarian aid would last only for 5 months, and in terms of fuel, only for 5 weeks. Is that still accurate? We're reading reports on that in the press.
I don't have the last figures on that, but we have been seeing, I mean, it is a matter of just a few months on that. And as you may have seen in the media, well, amongst yourselves also, that we were without electricity, any government-provided electricity for the last couple of days here.
Let's try it again. We're going to hear from Dmitry Poletsky. He is the deputy permanent representative of the Russian Federation to the United Nations, as he's speaking from the United Nations press stakeout floor. He is going to speak about the Nord Stream gas pipeline and its explosion. He is going to make accusations against Germany for withholding crucial information about the attack. He is also going to attempt to cast doubt on the integrity of Western investigations into the pipeline destruction, specifically questioning Germany's handling of the case and evidence. So let's hear what he has to say from the United Nations stakeout floor.
Very much for your patience. We had a very vivid discussion right now in the consultation room of the Security Council, first on Libya and then on Nord Stream. And the topic that we raised was linked to the sensational journalist investigations in Germany. And we are, of course, judging from the media. And it looks like those who drafted them were initially making up a scenario of a Hollywood blockbuster. But then the plans have changed. So only a child or a very naive person can believe that 3 amateur divers are behind this blast. Really? Okay. So should I repeat the phrase? Okay. So looks that those who drafted these scenarios were initially working on a scenario for a Hollywood blockbuster, and then the plans changed. And only a child or a very naive person can believe that 3 amateur divers are behind this blast. So those who promote this fairy tale want to create a smokescreen around confessions of US top officials in the sabotage of the Nord Stream, which are widely known. Actually, only one thing is clear. Germany has important information about this terrorist act, which it shares with journalists, but conceals from the Security Council. When we say that Germany must cooperate with the international community and disclose the information about its finding, it's not some kind of a wish, but it's something that it should do in line with its obligation under International Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombings signed in 1998. And we hope that Berlin will heed this request and duly inform the Security Council about its findings in the nearest future. In any case, I want you to rest assured that Russia will not be misled and will not drop its efforts to ensure accountability for those who are behind this terrorist act. And we will also continue to insist on international transparent investigation under the auspices of the UN Security Council. And its necessity has become even more clear to us after what we have read in US and German media. Thank you very much.
Ambassador, will you call for a Security Council meeting on this, and how the other member states react to
the Nord Stream?
Yeah.
Of course, at some point we will bring it to the attention of the Security Council, most likely the open briefing. The reaction was very mixed. I think most country members are worried of the fact that everybody is speaking about this. This is kind of an elephant in the room which escapes the Security Council, strangely enough. And of course the Western countries are trying to imply that they still believe in the integrity and the professionalism of German investigation. They were saying the same things about the Swedish investigation and Danish investigation, and we remember that their only conclusion was that the Nord Stream was in fact blown up. That was the genial conclusion of this investigation. So we have serious doubts about it, but the question is not in this right now. The question is that Germany should share what it has so far with the Security Council. It's its obligation, and it's something that we expect to be done in the nearest future.
Mr. Ambassador, you just said that Germany should share the results of its investigation with the Security Council. What other actions would Russia like to see in relation to the Nord Stream explosions?
Well, first of all, we don't find the findings that we can decide, we can judge about them only through internet and through media. We don't find them plausible. It raises a lot of questions. Again, I told you that only a very naive person or a kindergarten child could believe in such a logic. That a rogue group of 3 divers, non-professional, blowing up this pipeline, and then only Zaluzhny is to blame, Zelensky is not to blame, Americans are offended, and still they supply arms to Ukraine, and still they support Kiev regime, and Zaluzhny is not dismissed, and he is ambassador to the UK. Again, this is kind of a Hollywood blockbuster, but not real world. So we have quite a lot of doubts about this. The only way to find out the truth, we believe it, is international investigation. We proposed at some point of time, you remember, draft UN Security Council resolution with questions to Secretary General on how to organize better such kind of investigation. We think that this should be the first stage, because we need truth, and of course we will afterwards seek accountability to those who are behind this attack. There should be absolutely no doubt about it.
Turning to another topic, have any of Western members of the Security Council provide any reaction to Ukrainian incursion in Kursk region?
You know, it's a very interesting question, because so far they are very timid and I would say inactive in this regard, because they feel clearly awkward about what's happening in Kursk. First of all, there is almost unanimity in Ukrainian society and in Ukrainian few left unsuppressed media outlets in Ukraine that this is a big strategic blunder, and what's happening right now it hasn't achieved any goals that were formulated. And you remember that these goals were the seizure of Kursk power plant and then attempts to bargain it with Russia, and also withdrawal of Russian detachments from the Eastern Front. So these things are not achieved. Evidently, Ukraine is losing ground very quickly in the Eastern Front. It loses the position which were fortified and which were maintained there since the Maidan coup, since 2014. And everybody is understanding that this is a very fatal scenario for Ukraine. So on the one hand. On the other hand, these events, they have shown quite clearly the true colors of the Kiev regime, because people are being killed, shops are being looted, pregnant women are being killed, the UAVs are being targeted to ambulances and to volunteers. Yesterday there were 2 volunteers killed. There are a lot of people in Nazi insignia and even Western journalists who illegally, by the way, entered the Russian Federation, which we condemned with Ukrainian troops. Even they cannot conceal this, so it proves that the roots of Nazism is very deep in the Ukrainian society. All this awkward setting, they create a very, very special atmosphere for our Western colleagues, and they are not opening their mouth so far, because they are afraid that if they open their mouths and if they say something, they will be deadly compromised on the actions of the Ukrainian military. Of course, our society has consolidated. There are even more volunteers coming to the front, and I have absolutely no reasons to doubt that the followers of Nazis in Ukraine will have the same inglorious end as the followers of Hitler in Germany 80 years ago.
Ambassador, follow-up. I'm just a little bit curious. You just mentioned an international investigation, and you think Russia would draft a resolution to take action.
Back on Nord Stream, yes.
Nord Stream, yes. So my question is, who do you think is capable, or which agency do you think is capable to lead this international investigation? And if you draft a resolution, do you expect it even to be adopted in the Security Council on this matter?
If this kind of resolution is not adopted, then of course it will testify of the unwillingness of those countries who will not support this resolution to seek justice and accountability, and it will of course point out to the weakness of Security Council and to inability to protect critical international infrastructure. It may really bears very serious consequences for international community and for international cooperation. If you recall our previous draft on the investigation on Nord Stream sabotage, we didn't prejudge the shape of the commission, the agency, all these things. We wanted the advice of Secretary General, his recommendations to the Council of how better to proceed. We specifically did it this way because we didn't want to force anybody into anything. We wanted another discussion before we could set up this international commission, which should be trusted the whole support of the international community. But we didn't even come this way, and still at this moment we are stuck when Western colleagues are saying the investigation is going on, we should wait for the results, but everybody knows about these results. Allegedly, we don't know whether it's true or not. Everybody except the Security Council. What kind of situation is this? This is some kind of disrespect of the key body that is responsible for international peace and security. And this disrespect happened with a clear incitement from our Western colleagues. That's what I have to state.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, there's been a lot of surprise internationally that the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk has lasted so long and, according to the Ukrainians, taken more and more territory. What's your response to that in terms of both the surprise and the extent of the incursion?
Well, I'm not a military man, I'm not a military strategist. I have some historic background, that's true. I can recall to you, for example, 80 years ago there was a surprise German Wehrmacht operation in the Western Front. It was called Ardennes operation. Everybody was also in Germany saying that this is a turn in the war, but this was a strategic plot by the Allies, and the German army was defeated, and it had bared very serious consequences. I think that the Ukrainian dictator also will regret it very much, and there will be, of course, consequences for Ukraine, fatal consequences maybe. But the decision is made, and I think also that the whole country is regretting this move right now, except for Zelensky and his clique. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, again from the UN Stakeout floor, we're going to hear a joint statement from the UN Security Council about Libya women and children being excluded. The UN Security Council signatures of the statement shared comments for the principles of women, peace, and security. Ecuador, France, Guyana, Japan, Malta, and the Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Switzerland, the UK, and the United States highlight the lack of Libyan women's full and equal meaningful participation in shaping the future of Libya. The statement pointed out that no women have been included in the 5+5 Libyan Joint Military Commission on security arrangements, nor have they been included in the 5x5 Libyan Joint Committee preparing electoral laws. So why don't we hear from the statements that were made from the United Nations Stakeout floor again.
All right. Good morning. We, the Security Council signatories of the Statement of Shared Commitment for the Principles of Women, Peace and Security, Ecuador, France, Guyana, Japan, Malta, the Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America, take this opportunity to affirm our support to the protection and empowerment of Libyan women and girls. We express our grave concern about the lack of Libyan women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in shaping the future of their country. There have been no women in the 5+5 Libyan Joint Military Commission on Security Arrangement or the 6+6 Libyan Joint Committee for preparing electoral laws, and women representation has been low in national dialogues, parliament and government. While the country's national elections were postponed sine die, provisions for a 30% quota for women, as agreed by the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum roadmap, or 25% as set in the draft Libyan constitution, risk being ignored, as the latest approved electoral law only allocates 6 seats to women out of the 90 seats composing the future Libyan Senate. We request the UN to continue reporting on women's representation in every relevant committee and institution, and to remind all parties that the Security Council has urged Libyan institutions and authorities to ensure the full, equal, effective, meaningful, and safe participation of women at all levels, including in leadership positions and all stages of decision-making relating to inclusive political processes, democratic transition, reconciliation efforts, conflict resolution, and peace building. We also condemn the reprisals against Libyan women participating in public and political life, call on Libyan authorities to hold perpetrators accountable, and urge UNSMIL, within its mandate, to strengthen coordination of its response to reprisals. We reiterate Libya's international commitment on women's rights and empowerment, representing universal values that contribute to sustainable development and peace. Additionally, we raise our alarm about the shrinking civic space, including civil society organizations, advancing women's rights and gender equality, with stricter requirements for registration, gender-based violence, and reports of harassment and targeting of women human rights defenders. We are also concerned about the online harassment and violence against women, which can translate into physical violence and can impact women's ability to participate in Libya's politics, civic life, and media. We recall that the Security Council has urged the authorities to recognize the need to protect migrant women, women's rights organizations, and women peace builders from threat, reprisals, and attack, and strongly encourage all parties to create a safe and enabling environment for members of civil society. We have received with concern the UN reports about attempts to frame universally accepted terms like gender as a threat to, and I quote, Libya's society and values, end of quote, thus endangering the work of all actors working on gender equality and women's protection, participation, and rights. We are also concerned about the disproportionate impact of the anti-cybercrime law on women human rights defenders. We remain equally concerned about human rights violations and abuses against women and girls, including migrant women, both in detention centers and facilities and in situations of displacement or trafficking, as reported for many years by human rights investigations and a panel of experts supporting the Security Council Libya Sanctions Committee. Most survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, including those who become pregnant, have limited access to justice and essential health services. The legal framework remains discriminatory, and a draft law on the protection of women and girls against all forms of violence, including sexual and gender-based violence, has not been adopted. Finally, we urge Libyan authorities to expedite the adoption of legislation to address trafficking and violence against women and girls, fight against impunity of the perpetrators, and hold them accountable. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Concretely, what are you going to do? Because those are words that women are still suffering. They're still raped. They're still taken away from their family. They cannot go to school. What can be done?
I can only read the commitment on behalf of the member state that have signed up to it. And in terms of your question, I cannot answer it now, except I do so in a personal national capacity. But we do have a meeting, so I encourage you to follow the meeting, and I believe the commitments were covered most of the issues which you've asked about. Thank you again. Thank you, colleagues.
Okay, we're going to hear next from Ontario as the Minister of Housing and the Minister of Infrastructure as they make separate statements to the Ontario Municipalities Conference that was held earlier this week, talking about what the provincial government for Ontario has plans to help municipalities and help with housing and also infrastructure.
Thank you so much for also being a wonderful host. It is always special to be in the nation's capital. Colleagues, look, each and every year we come together to take stock of where we are and what we're doing and how we are going to move forward over the coming year. Now, as I said in the video, when we took office, it was clear that Ontario was struggling. We were struggling under the burden of overregulation, crippling taxes, and out-of-control energy prices. The healthcare advantage that we had and that had been so key in helping us attract investment to the province of Ontario, well, we had lost that advantage. Our manufacturers, well, they had lost faith. And at the same time, over 300,000 jobs vanished from the province of Ontario. Why? Because we had become one of the least competitive jurisdictions in North America to do business. Now, for our northern colleagues, you will remember that our predecessors, they called Northern Ontario no man's land. And they failed to invest in infrastructure. They failed to invest in transit, long-term care, roads, bridges, and highways. But the Premier knew we had to do things differently. He understood that if Ontario was once again to be a national leader and global powerhouse, that we had to cut taxes. And we have just done that. As we said in the video, we cut taxes for small, medium, and large job creators. The cost of doing business in the province of Ontario by over $1 billion in red tape reductions. We have stabilized energy prices, and we have become a global leader in advancing technologies to meet the clean energy demand of the future. And we are investing in healthcare with massive investments in modern hospitals and long-term care in communities of all sizes. We are building new roads, new transit and transportation networks all across the province of Ontario. People said that we couldn't build new hospitals in small and rural communities. We're doing that, and we're modernizing those hospitals. They said we couldn't get subways into York Region. Well, we are getting subways into York Region. They said that we couldn't expand GO train services two-way all day. We're doing that. They said that in Kenora that we couldn't two-lane that highway from Manitoba to Kenora because it would be too expensive. Well, we're getting that done as well. And colleagues, you've heard it from the Premier and you've heard from my cabinet and caucus colleagues that no part of this province could be left behind by the explosive growth in our province, and the Premier has said that Northern Ontario had to be a major part of the growth of our province, and that is why we are bringing back the Northlander. That is why we are opening up the Ring of Fire and connecting Northern Ontario to the grid and to high-speed internet. And since 2018, we have leveraged more than $2.4 billion in investment, creating over 10,000 jobs in northern communities by funding over 6,700 projects across the north. And the Premier understands that now more than ever, Ontario's prosperity, I say this very clearly to some of my Southern Ontario colleagues, Ontario's prosperity is dependent on the economic might of Northern Ontario like it never has been before, and we will not leave Northern Ontario behind. Now, colleagues, when we last met here at AMO, it was becoming very clear that inflation was becoming a very big challenge. The Bank of Canada had just raised interest rates faster than at any other time in the history of our country. And it had become very expensive to build homes, very expensive to build infrastructure. And for those looking to buy their first home, the increasing interest rates priced them out of the market. But before those interest rate hikes, Ontario had begun building homes, and homes of all types, faster than we had ever done that before. Purpose-built rentals were at an all-time high. We had never built more purpose-built rentals faster than we had prior to those interest rate hikes. And new housing starts smashed decades-old records in the province of Ontario. And at last year's AMO conference, when we left, we resolved that we were going to work together. We're going to work better together. You, our municipal colleagues, and we, your provincial partners. And in the last year, I think that we have done a good job and that we have listened. We have made changes to better address your ability to deliver infrastructure. We have introduced a use it or lose it provision to unlock stalled projects. We have exempted universities from the Planning Act to unlock student housing and to get shovels in the ground faster. And we have modernized the application process to ensure that the appeals process to further unlock a development process. And that change alone will unlock 65,000 units that have been held up at the OLT. And today, colleagues, after a significant amount of consultation with you, with stakeholders, with First Nations leaders, I am proud to say that we are launching Ontario's new provincial planning statement, and I know a lot of you have been asking for that, and today we will be launching that new statement. So look, the new plan, it will build on our ability to build more homes across the province of Ontario by reducing red tape. But it's going to do it without sacrificing your ability to protect jobs and to build beautiful, livable communities. Now, with this new planning statement, we are giving you, municipalities, the tools and the flexibility that you need to build more homes. It will ensure one consistent set of planning direction across the province. It recognizes that municipalities understand local challenges and priorities when it comes to building homes, and that the types of homes that are needed to be built in your communities, it is you who know best what you should be building in your communities for your residents. And colleagues, one of the most important things about the new planning statement is that it ensures that through our housing starts can continue to grow even with the global uncertainty that we're seeing, even with And colleagues, as I said earlier in the speech, we said that we were going to work together. Been able to be used. They failed to recognize that, and by working together, we took on the federal government and we won. And let me tell you this, colleagues, we're not going to stop there. The success of the Team Ontario approach is one that we will continue to do as we move forward to try to unlock federal infrastructure dollars in the coming months. And I want to sincerely thank AMO and all of you for your assistance in helping us unlock that funding. Get really thirsty up here. Now, colleagues, at the Roma conference, many of you who were at the Roma conference will remember I said that it is time for us to end the culture of delay. We need to work together in order to deliver results. And last year, over 500,000 people came to this province. They came here to seek to help us build a bigger, better, stronger, and safer province of Ontario. They came here for the opportunity. Now, it's the opportunity that comes with over $50 billion worth of investment. It's the opportunity that comes when over 800,000 people now have the dignity of a job that didn't before 2018. And we are attracting people from around the world. All of you know this because you are seeing it in your communities. We're attracting people from around the world, from around Canada, from across Canada, from the United States, and they want to come here. They are coming here with a commitment to help us build, but at the same time, they are asking us for something in return. They are asking us to help them achieve their goal. And we have to do that by showing leadership. You know, when my parents came here, my dad got off a train, off a boat, came from Italy in the late 50s, early 60s. My mom went to work on the Danforth. His dream was a house. After his day-long shift, he went to a small home on the Danforth where his 3 brothers lived, but one by one, they achieved their goal. They achieved their dream. And it is up to us to ensure that we remove obstacles so that everybody can enjoy the dream of home ownership. And across the province, let me say this, across the province, many of you are showing leadership. In London, under Mayor Morgan, over 10,000 homes have already been approved this year, which compares to 5,300 all of last year. That's a 95% increase. In Guelph and Hamilton, Mayors Guthrie and Horvath, well, they use strong mayor powers to transform parking lots into affordable housing. In my hometown of Stouffville, Mayor Lovett and that council, well, they smashed through their housing targets in 2023. And this year in Oakville, under Mayor Burton, they have not only already met their housing target, they surpassed it by the end of June. Now, I talked a lot about, to a lot of you who've come to see me over the last couple of days, I talked about the sense of that we got out of the Roma conference and in some of those northern and rural conferences that we have. There was an energy that came out of those 2 conferences. Delegation after delegation after delegation was focused on how they can play a role in building more homes, how they can be a part of building 1.5 million homes across the province of Ontario. Many of you said you did not want to be left behind. I look at St. Thomas under the leadership of Mayor Preston. By saying yes, Mayor Preston helped us deliver one of the largest investments in the province of Ontario. In New Tecumseh, supported by Collingwood, they will support one of the largest investments in our country's history. So, colleagues, let us build more by making it easier, by reducing duplication and barriers to building more in smaller communities as well as in our larger communities. Smaller communities will no longer be left out of the dream of home ownership. You will continue and you will play an even bigger part in helping us meet our goals, and we will reduce those barriers and those obstacles, and we will help you get the job done. But we must hold each other accountable. Now, as I've crisscrossed the province, I've heard you say, and I've heard those that are building homes across the province say, that we need to do more to streamline approvals and harmonize process. Colleagues, look, a single detached home should be the same thing in Markham as it is in Kenora. The building code should be used as a tool to guide us, but not confuse us or the people who want to make investments in the province. And time after time after time, I have heard how the building code and how lack of harmonization is making it more difficult to build in the province of Ontario. We have to end the confusion, and we have to make it easier to build. But as we hold you accountable, I'm very much aware of the fact that we have to hold ourselves accountable. Of course, starting with my ministry, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, but also the Ministry of Transportation, Environment, Energy, and Natural Resources. We cannot criticize you if we cannot deliver and focus on delivering better for you at the same time. My Associate Minister, yeah, okay, that's a good clap. I mean, I didn't tell my cabinet colleagues mentioned there that I was going to say that, so that might be a big cool reception after. But we've heard it time and time again, and we have to do a better job. Now, look, the Associate Minister of Housing, Minister Thana Gaslam, and Parliamentary Assistant Ray, look, we are focused on getting more homes built and delivering for the people of the province of Ontario. Now, we can say yes to do more because we have to, or we can say yes to doing more because it is the right thing to do and because we can. Now, in Athens, Ontario, I've talked about this at Roma. In Athens, Ontario, I know Mayor Herb Scott was here. He said yes to building a new long-term care home in a small community. Wasn't easy to do, but very soon people will be moving into a brand new long-term care community in Athens, Ontario. He said yes. That community said yes. They got it done. They did what they had to do to get more homes built. In Mississauga, under the leadership of Mayor Parrish, yesterday we had a delegation, and I can't tell you how excited I was to hear Mayor Parrish and her council colleagues say that Mississauga can do more, will do more. They will reduce red tape, they will reduce duplication, and they will deliver more housing for the people of the province of Ontario. In Burlington, Ontario, they are reducing development charges. In Barrie, they are reducing development charges. In Timmins, Niagara-on-the-Lake, they both came in and said they want to be a part of building more homes in the province of Ontario. They want to build more homes so that they can attract more jobs and opportunities to their communities. In Rainy River, they said a new bridge, a new investment that was so long overdue will unleash opportunities for them that they have never had before, and they want to play a role. So it is our job to let you make those investments, to help you unlock the obstacles. And let me be very clear. We'll work with you to unlock those obstacles. We'll work with you to get shovels in the ground. We're making investments on infrastructure. We will work with you to harmonize and to do better so that we can deliver for those who want to make massive investments in our community. But let's be under no illusion. We want to work with you, and we continue to work with you, but we will not hesitate to remove obstacles and to get things done across the province of Ontario. Now, before I conclude, I want to take a moment. I really do. You know, Colin, I can't thank you enough. He has shown incredible leadership as your president, and the work that we have been able to accomplish together has been simply amazing. And I thank you so much for your leadership and your guidance and your willingness to come to the table always and help be a part of finding solutions. I can't tell you, a big round of applause to Colin, because without him, we would have not been where we are here today. I always say, Colin, it's better to leave on your own terms. I got fired once in politics, and that's not, it's not a lot of fun, let me tell you. So it's always better to leave on your own terms when you've done a great job, and I think this conference really has to be one of those highlights. And to Robin, the incoming president, and your entire team, let me assure you that I remain committed. The caucus and cabinet colleagues, we remain committed to continuing to work with you and your entire team, because together we have accomplished so much in the province of Ontario. Our province, as the Premier has said, is the envy of Canada. It is the envy of the world, and we can work together to make Ontario a bigger, better, stronger, safer province, and together we'll get that accomplished. And with that, again, I thank you so much, and I invite my cabinet colleagues to join me on the stage for the most exciting part of all, the Ministers' Forum. Thank you all very much.
You and see all of you today. Before I get started, I want to congratulate AMO on their 125th anniversary. Woo! That's 125 years of building strong, thriving communities across our province. That is a remarkable achievement that you should all be very proud of. Can you believe that Ontario's population was just over 2 million when AMO's first meeting was held in Hamilton in 1899? Today, we're around 16 million. And in a little over 2 decades, Ontario's population is expected to rise to over 21 million. We know that Ontario's infrastructure must be upgraded to keep pace with population growth and ensure a world-class standard of living for the future. It's a tall order, and it requires big thinking and bold action. It also requires courage and conviction from all of us who serve the public. That's why Ontario's plan to build includes the most ambitious capital plan in the province's history, with an investment of more than $190 billion over the next decade to modernize and expand Ontario's infrastructure. That's a generation-defining investment. But our government knows that we can't build Ontario alone. Our municipal partners are essential. We rely on your leadership and advice to provide the best possible support for your communities. That's why being able to speak with you today is so important to me. I want to thank Colin and the entire AMO board for this opportunity. Our government has listened to municipalities. By funding infrastructure, we are removing the largest barrier to building homes for the people of Ontario. We're making a historic investment of more than $1.9 billion to support housing-enabling infrastructure projects across the province. It was with great pleasure that I joined Premier Ford in Mississauga earlier this month to announce an investment of $970 million through the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. This ambitious fund lets us work with you to put shovels in the ground sooner and unlock the housing Ontario needs. The funding will support projects enabling the construction of 511,000 new housing units across 60 municipalities. And this is a very important note. $456 million of these dollars were allocated to small, rural, and northern communities. That 511,000 homes is more than a third of our government's 2031 goal. But ultimately, it's the results on the local level that count the most. In Peel Region alone, this funding is helping to deliver nearly 47,000 new homes. We'll be hearing more from municipalities all over Ontario as they announce their projects in weeks to come. And by the way, here, I need to thank Guelph's incredible Mayor, Cam Guthrie. His advocacy has been instrumental in this work, and he's doing an amazing job. Guelph is receiving over $2 million for this infrastructure to support nearly 2,000 new homes. I know Cam is going to do great. As any other work needed to unlock lands for redevelopment. And of that $400 million investment, we're allocating $120 million specifically for projects in small, rural, and northern municipalities. I'm pretty excited about it too. With $250 million more for water, and $400 million for critical infrastructure, I'm confident that we will reach our goal of building 1.5 million homes across Ontario. We are getting it done together. As we work together to achieve these goals, we recognize that both municipalities and the province face challenges like inflation, supply chain issues, and labor shortages, issues beyond our control. That's why we are working with Infrastructure Ontario to adapt how we deliver our largest P3 projects so that we can stay on track and build hospitals, public transit, highways, long-term care homes, and schools across Ontario. Increasingly, this includes progressive procurement strategies, a more collaborative approach between parties to build very important projects like the Peter Gilgan Mississauga Hospital and the Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus Redevelopment Project. We're also exploring the use of innovative technologies like digital twins. A digital twin is a 3D virtual map of a current or planned infrastructure project. As an example, let's imagine that you're a construction worker on site. Imagine having the ability to see underground infrastructure on a tablet or a phone. Think about how much safer and easier it would be to build and make progress on that project. With these models, we can identify risks before physical work even starts. This technology is already being used in the UK, and our government is studying these applications very closely. Infrastructure Ontario and my ministry are exploring digital twins on 3 complex infrastructure projects: the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension, the Peter Gilgan Mississauga Hospital redevelopment, and my favorite project, the Ontario Place redevelopment project. I look forward to seeing the lessons learned and collaborating with municipalities on strategies for the future. And it is my hope that in the coming months, we will be implementing digital twin technology to build Ontario together. Before I go, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. Our government stands ready to help you deliver the critical infrastructure needed in your communities. We are in your corner. It's by working together that we will lay the foundation for a stronger Ontario and create prosperity for generations to come. We should all be proud. Our water program is the most aggressive and effective housing policy in the country. Let's get the job done together. Thank you.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.